Well, hello there. Good morning again. If you've just joined us, of course, this is the AM show. Welcome to our big conversations. The first issue that we're dealing with here on our show on AM Talk is the 2020 election petition hearing. And we want to start off by reminding you of where we've come. Of course, we've come to this point, first of all, with the petition because the NDC's candidate in the 2020 elections, John Dramani Mahama, insists that no candidate secured more than 50% of the votes. So last week, the courts began hearing the case. The court had decided that the hearings will be telecast live on television. Therefore, the John Dramani Mahama's legal team did not even have the opportunity to move this motion. So the court had decided that it would telecast its hearings live, just as it did in the 2020 election petition hearing. And then it went on to deal with the first matter, which was an application to amend some errors in the NDC's, in John Dramani Mahama's petition. I beg your pardon. The court allowed the lawyers to do that. It gave 4 p.m. that same day to make the necessary corrections and gave the respondent, the Electoral Commission, and Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo the following day, Friday, 4 p.m., to also make corrections if they needed to, or make some amendments. So that was basically what happened in courts on day one of the hearing. We'll take you through some of the issues that have come up as well. So on day one, who was in courts? Of course, the Electoral Commission chairperson, Jean Mensah, was in courts. The first respondent in this petition hearing, second respondent. Okay, so Jean Mensah was in courts representing the Electoral Commission. On Akufo-Addo's side, the party that he represented, there were members of the party, the NPP, also in courts. John Dramani Mahama, the petitioner, was in court as well as his lawyers. So we discovered last Thursday that Chacha Chikata was leading his team and Tony Litha was with him in this process. On Akufo-Addo's side, he had 4 lawyers, the lead, Akoto Ampao, Frank Davis, Kweku Estrifi, and Yao Opong. And that's the second respondent. And then on the Electoral Commission side, we saw Justin Amanuvo and one other representing the Electoral Commission. But who are the judges in this case? The Chief Justice, Justice Anin, Justice Yao Apao, Mafusao, Professor Ashikote, Mariam Owusu, Nene Amegache, and Gertrude Tokono. That's the 7-member panel that looked at the application to make the amendments. Well, let's talk about what's going to happen today. First, there are some issues that I need to bounce off my guests, who are both legal practitioners. One is Mr. Martin Amidu, who gave us some education before the hearing last week. A very good morning to you, Mr. Martin Amidu. Thank you so much for your time on the AM show. If you can hear me.
Good morning.
Okay, great. Good morning. And then Justice Abdulai is also a lawyer. Good morning to you, sir. Thank you so much for your time.
Sorry. Good morning. I believe you are doing good.
Oh, yes, I am well. You're good yourself?
Thank God. As you can see, we haven't had enough sleep, so but we are all fighting for God and country, as always.
Absolutely. You haven't had enough sleep because of the election petition hearing?
Unfortunately, because of a lot of other things in addition.
Okay.
And Martin understands that better.
Okay. All right. All right, so Mr. Amidu, let's pick up from some of the things that you shared with us even before the court starts last week. You were quite hopeful that we will have a 9-member panel. We have a 7-member panel. I spoke to a spokesperson, one of the spokesperson for John Dramani Mahama, his legal team. Mr. Basset Bamba last Friday after the hearing. And he was thinking that maybe the panel that we saw last week, we won't see that same panel. Perhaps we will probably see a 9-member panel. What do you think of this?
Yeah, it's difficult to tell for certain because in one breath, yes, we can go with Dr. Bamba because the last time it was emotion, okay? Yes, sometimes the panel for emotion is lower than the panel for full hearing. So it's possible. But I'm also thinking that for certain, once the Chief Justice and panel 7 for the motion is likely to remain, because it's a case of justice, and I know people are very sensitive to anything that changes. It appears that subsequently there are 9 that will also begin to cause some murmurs and stirs here and there. So, though in theory, Dr. Bamba is right by saying that it's likely to increase, on the practical front, it's possible that it will just remain 7.
Let me just get a quick thought from Justice Abdulai on the composition of this panel, 7-member panel, not the 9 that we saw in 2012, if it remains the same.
Well, we need to understand that ordinarily the Supreme Court is constituted by 5-member panel. And so unless there is a reason to reduce the numbers to 1 or anything close to that, ordinarily it is 5-member panel that sits on any matter that comes before it. The sensitivity of the issue would usually inform the Chief Justice as to the number that he ought to empanel. And we need to also remember that these are purely administrative decisions of the Chief Justice. These are non-legal issues. And so you cannot even contest it when the Chief Justice empanels his members. He has complete discretion as to how to empanel his people, when to empanel them, and at what point in time to bring one person on board or the other. But of course, from the previous 2012 election petition, having had 9 members, I would have thought that for the purposes of experience, we would have had almost the same people or those who are presently in office, and then also the same numbers or even more, just so we have multiplicity of views with regards to the judgment when it's finally delivered. Because you need to whip up the entire nation behind you by way of trust, by way of confidence, and also by way of how would you call it? The consistency. And so I indeed expected a 9-member panel made up of largely those who were members of the previous panel, that is the 2012 panel, and then a bit of the new justices of the Supreme Court for the purposes of the experience and other things. So I do not foresee a major shift, but for the sake of consistency, as Martin has said, it is likely that we have the same panel hearing the substantive issues.
All right, let's go to some of the developments that have come up, and I'll start with you, Mr. Martin Amidu. We've seen requests to admit facts stated by Jean Mensah, the EC chairperson, in the declaration of the presidential election result on the 9th of December. I wonder the purpose of this request to admit facts that John Dramani Mahama's team has put forward. Can you explain that to us?
Okay, so basically, what it does is that it serves some 2 interrelated purposes. One, it makes it very clear in the mind of the opposing party. So when they say request to admit facts, if they ask those questions, so when you admit, okay, it's very clear that yes, this is the answer. So let's say for the, you say hypothetical example, So that I'm not talking about the one before the court. So let's say the Mensa, you have the elections on the 7th of December. Is that correct? So in such a case, when the answer comes, yes or no, we will know for sure that, okay, on this particular question, this is the answer. So we are very certain about it. So when it comes to cross-examination, they are not likely to repeat the same questions. So you see that it begins to serve the purpose of narrowing down the trial. Don't forget, we have just 7 days for the trial. 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. As compared to the last time, the 2012 election petition, when we had several months for the trial, okay? Several is even an understatement because, it took about 8 months, right? And I put it to you, took at least 4 months of it, if my memory serves me right. This time we have just 7 days. So the request to admit acts in cross-examination. You remember the last I was saying that this time the judges are likely to limit the lawyers in the cross-examination. They give them, okay, say 3 hours, 2 hours, and so on and so forth. So that is why this tool is being deployed to ask certain questions and get certainty on them. Then when it comes to the cross-examination, they may be asked in parentheses, but they won't be the major thrust of the cross-examination.
Ms. Abdulai, is there something more that you want to add?
Indeed, yes. As Martin said, usually when you have these interrogatories served on you, the whole essence is to avoid the ambiguities that is in the minds of those that have been the parties to the suit. Whenever you are served with this, anytime somebody intends serving you with this or serves you with this, it clearly tells you that there are certain information that, for instance, in the petition, that are either not clear to the person serving you with these interrogatories, or for whatever reason, he does not want to belay that point, and so he wants certainty and clarity on that, and it avoids all forms of doubt. Now, considering the fact that we have limited time in this particular case as well, once these interrogatories are gone through, what it means is that the Supreme Court will have the benefit of this information even before the trial commences, and it shortens the period because the Supreme Court will then have opportunity to go through these informations as provided by the parties by way of interrogatories and be able to see through the minds of the petitioner or any other person who has filed a process in the court. This way, some of the issues that possibly would have come up during cross-examination would be shielded because really they would have had information ahead of time. And so it limits the unnecessary questions. Now, we should remember that at cross-examination, lawyers are at liberty to ask anything on planet Earth. And some of them may be unnecessary, others will simply target at getting you irritated and so give the wrong responses. And of course, that would inure to the benefit of the person asking you these questions. And so it is in view of all these facts that it is advised that if you can take advantage of interrogatories, then why don't you serve questions to the parties to the suit? And then if they admit of them, then those ones would be shielded. Then the most important ones that possibly are contentious would be addressed during the cross-examination. So indeed, this is a very important exercise, and I'm happy the parties are taking advantage of it because it will fast-track everything ahead of us come maybe next week or today.
Okay. Mr. Pebble, would the Electoral Commission necessarily, do they have to respond to this? Do they have to admit to these facts? And we're going to open my John line in a bit so that we can roll out some of the facts that John Dramani Mahama's legal team is, putting out for the Electoral Commission to admit. Mr. Pebble.
Yes. An answer must be provided for each one of those. very, very critical. If they don't answer,
Mr. Pebble, the connection is getting bad. If you can reposition yourself, otherwise.
Managed lawyers come to answer. So it's
Hello, Mr. Pebble. The connection is getting really bad. But when you said hello there, I thought it was clearer. Can you try again?
Yeah. So I said the EC must answer all those questions. It's compulsory. So if it happens that maybe a question or two are not clear, they will indicate so that it can be clarified. But in the absence of any ambiguity, they are required to answer all. And if they don't answer, of course, it won't even arise that they will refuse to answer. So let's put it succinctly this way. If a person refuses to answer the interrogatory, the other party who filed them has the right to apply to the court to compel them to answer. Yes, but I don't think that should arise in this case. This is a very sensitive case. Nobody will anything to begin to put bad press. Yes.
Okay. Isn't Justice Abdulai answering those facts, wouldn't it be leading to some kind of admissions?
Indeed, that's the whole essence of this. It is to get the petitioner admit those facts, either because those facts have been wrongly provided or have been concealed or have been put such that they are not clear in the mind of the Electoral Commission, or because they have completely not even been provided at all. And so either of these three circumstances will be a basis for a person to serve you with an interrogatory, so that once you admit of them, and you cannot choose, well, of course, you can deny them if you so wish, but it puts matters beyond doubt. And your admission or denial will be a basis for the person to cross-examine you on same. And remember, if you're cross-examining on the same facts that you probably deny, then you end up affirming them positively. It could be a subject of perjury. It could be a subject of perjury. So we need to remember these, that court processes are not simply matters that you go and possibly just lie your way through or mislead everybody else on. Depending on the way you go about this, you could land yourself behind and so on. And so we need to be careful about some of these things. Now, admitting or not admitting will depend on the entire circumstances of the issues before the court. If it is factual, if it is truthful, you would have to admit it. If it is not, then you have to deny. So it's not something that you really have a lot of options out there to navigate through.
Okay, I'm just going to take our viewers through, I think, about 13 of those facts that John Dramani Mahama's legal team has put out there. But Mr. Pebble, is this part of the case management, the pre-trial conference in the form of case management?
Not strictly not. So what I mean by strictly not is that on practical grounds, it will help Mr. Mahama's team to expedite the trial. But it is not something that is required to be filed as part of the pre-trial. I mean, what I mean is that it's not a mandatory obligation. So it's not like you must bring interrogatories. No. It's only when a party deems it that you will file. If it doesn't deem it fit, it doesn't file. So it's an option to them. It is a tool in the kit. As and when you find it useful, you deploy it. If you don't find it useful, it stays in the kit. That's the whole point. But bottom line, it will help in the expeditious trial of the case, since it will cover certain grounds ahead of the actual trial.
Okay. How about the initial objections raised by the two respondents, the Electoral Commission and Nana Adudankwa Akufo-Addo, essentially saying that John Dramani Mahama doesn't even have a case at all, so don't bother yourself going into trial. Justice Abdulai, I want you to address that. Where would we find that being heard? Is it today?
Yeah, most likely the Supreme Court would address all these matters today, and they are likely to tell us the mode of that. They may either ask them, both parties, I mean, all the sides, to file, address the Supreme Court on that, most likely to be a written address, or they could make it part of the whole trial just to avoid delay. Because usually, we call it mini trial. If the Supreme Court would want to handle that part alone, solely, they could have a mini trial on that. And they could, if they want to deal with that separately, we will have directions today as to how going forward that one will be done. But usually, because of the timelines that are ahead of us in this matter, I foresee a possibility of the Supreme Court merging that with the substantive issues, and then in their final judgment, they will then discuss these matters involving the objections being raised by the respondents. That way, we'll be able to beat the timelines ahead of us, and then also, so you achieve the same purpose without having to curtail the full scale of the full scale trial of the issues. Because we need to remember that if the Supreme Court decides to go into a mini trial over the objections being raised by the respondents, it will extend the time, minimum about a week or two. And I say a week or two because usually it would have been more. But the way the Supreme Court is handling this matter, I do not foresee an extended time as lawyers would always have. Otherwise, mini trial could even take you a month or more in a regular, normal trial of cases. But I see this going maybe a week or two. Maybe if the Supreme Court doesn't want to extend the time by adding this 1 week or 2 weeks for the mini trial to be conducted, then we are likely to see a measure of both. Of both, and so that what that would mean is that we go through the entire 7 days of having our trial, cross-examination and examination in chief, and blah 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 blah, and then on the day of judgment, having delivered their judgment either orally or in writing, then they would indicate how they treated the issue of objections. And benefit, I'm sure viewers and all those who may be interested in reading and knowing how the objection was treated would have that answer in the final judgment of the Supreme Court. So these are the two options available to the Supreme Court. One of these options, the Supreme Court will be exercising today for all of us to benefit from. I
want my viewers to be on the same page with us. So this is what the fresh document that I talk about in terms of what John Mahama's legal team wants the Electoral Commission to admit. And Mr. Pebble, you can help me out here. I see that some of them are very basic in terms of, and they facts, obviously. So if you look at that, the purported declaration of the presidential results of 7 December by Mrs. Jean Mensah, the chairperson of the Electoral Commission, on the 9th of December was broadcast live on radio, television, and other electronic media. There's also the bit about the video and audio recording of the purported declaration that they attach. If you go down, the chairperson has made no other purported declaration in respect of the presidential election result of 7th December. And then also the errors that were made in that declaration and the subsequent correction that came up. And then you would find that John Dramani Mahama's legal team, they've put those figures together and it comes up to what they still maintain, that nobody got 50%. Nobody got 50% or more of the total vote cast. My question to you really is that, aren't some of these pointers obvious facts, or this is a layperson talking? So I don't know what I'm saying.
No. It's a very important point you've raised. But you see, when the lawyer asks you a simple question, so simple that I think is a no-brainer, that is the time you ought to be very careful, very, very careful. So let's see the example of the one that says that the results were broadcast live on TV, radio, and so on and so forth. So what I can foresee sitting here is that Subsequently, they adjusted the results. So that is what this question is aimed at. That, so you told the general public, these are the results. Then you say yes. But then it turns out that later, you kept adding numbers and adding numbers. You see, let's not lose sight of a certain critical fact. In actual fact, it may even turn out to be the most critical, which is that this case is not a purely legal case. No. Look, it's also indirectly a strike to sell a stolen verdict. You see, it's a case being sold that there was a stolen verdict. So for the same man, when you repeat over and over, that the EC first brought out A as a result, then later went and adjusted it and said it's B, and then later went and said it is C, later D, later E, later F, 6 times, like they reclaiming, then you are selling a case of a stolen verdict, which is even more important than what you get in the courtroom. So that in future, this same electorate, they think that let us take up to Mr. Mahama. Well, don't look at it that, oh, this is obvious. No. Number one, it will discredit the EC. And then number two, Mr. Mahama will get a lot of goodwill with voters. And that is where the critical is really getting goodwill in the mind of voters tomorrow.
Very, very revealing what you've just said there, Martin Amidu. But let me get my director to take us to point 15. And I want to ask you a direct question based on the point 15. Can we just go up on this, Mr. Justice Abdulai? That's the purported correction issued in an unsigned press release of first respondent in this case, which is the Electoral Commission, on the 10th of December, stated that the total valid votes cast was now 13,119,460. My question has to do with the unsigned press release. And yesterday, I tried to go back to the release that was issued on the 10th of December, and I realized that down there, they had written Electoral Commission. How important is this little bit of a piece of release that has not been signed? And what do lawyers mean when they say a document is unsigned?
Well, clearly, this goes to the validity of that particular document. That is the whole basis, whether that document is actually coming from the Electoral Commission itself or not. So it goes to the root of that document, whether it was a correct information coming from the Electoral Commission, whether it's official information coming from the Electoral Commission, whether indeed it is emanating from the official sources of the Electoral Commission. So that should be understood beyond doubt, that the references there are an attempt to cast doubt as to whether indeed that press release came from official sources. If it did, then clearly there are issues with regards to the numbers that were put out there via that press release. If it did not, then there may be other question marks. Now, we need to understand this also from the perspective of admissibility of evidence. If it turns out that because it is not signed and the letterhead can be manufactured, if the use of these languages, words, would then make it, if the Electoral Commission admits of this, then the Supreme Court can have it admitted as part of the evidence if the NDC decides to tender it in evidence. Otherwise, it will be difficult for that document to be tendered in because the sources may not be known. If the source is not known, it cannot serve the purpose of any evidential rule in the Supreme Court.
Okay.
Because any document purporting to come from an official source at least have to meet basic requirements. That's i.e. letterheads, stamping, signing, among other things, and the designation of the persons even signing. So the references to all these unsigned documents, blah, 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 are to tell you that they do not even believe that that document, that press release, is an official press release of the Electoral Commission. And so if the Electoral Commission actually believes that it is indeed their official document and it's coming from them, then they'll probably have to admit of it so that that can also be tendered in evidence.
This is turning out to be fascinating. Mr. Pebble, would it matter then, if you agree with Justice Abdulai, that would it matter that if you go back into history, the Electoral Commission has always released its statement in that manner? Would it matter?
Yes, it does. So that because it has a track record of releasing its statements to the public in that manner, the EC would then say, yes, this is true, it's our statement. So that no issues will be raised that, oh, this is a letter that has not been, or a statement that has not been authenticated, but it's not been signed. So once the EC admits that, yes, the letter, unless the press statement is true, EC issued it, then it means that all doubts are cleared, and any person who seeks to tender it in evidence will not have any challenges.
So, Mr. Pebble, when should we expect a response? I mean, how are things going to play out today with this fresh motion, and then also the initial objection being raised by Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo and then Electoral Commission?
Okay, good. So today is pre-trial, okay? So because we don't have much time, I can foresee the Supreme Court giving the respondents the time within which to respond, and very quickly, yes, so that we don't lose time, because today they would also most likely give them directions as to when to bring their witness statement and the physical evidence. So, for example, the pink sheets and all those, right? Because you remember today is 19th of January. So today is the 20th since the case started. And we have just 42. So if I said the 20th because I think the issue was served on the 31st of December. So if you add 31st to today 19th, we have 20 days. So it means that we have 22 to go. We don't have much time left. And you know, Mahama, strictly speaking, by now, the trial should have started. Because from the 15th, we should have started. So you see that we've lost some time. And I've said it previously elsewhere that, you know, these judges, they are very good at what they do. So it's most likely that they will yield part of the time given to them by the CI 99. That is the amendment that was made to the law. They will yield part of their time to the lawyers so that the trial can be conducted. Under the CI 99, which is amending CI 16, the judges have 21 days to return their verdict. And then we're on day 20, the date for the trial over. So inevitably, the judges will give part of their time to the parties to conduct the actual hearing. I'll put it to you. You and I were not here and all that. So what I'm saying is that all of this, considering that we've lost so much time, all of this will be decided today. Okay? And let's also quickly point out that, please, much as the 42 days is being stated in law, it's also being held by the Supreme Court that if you're given a time to come out with judgment, and that time passes, let's say it elapses, doesn't mean you cannot bring the judgment after the deadline. So what I'm saying is that, look, if at the trial it turns out that very critical issues of evidence have to be addressed, so much so that we have to go a bit outside the 42 days, that should not cause an alarm. It's better that we discuss the law dispassionately ahead than for us confronted where there is so much little time left for the judges, and yet because the 42 days is stored in our minds, it look as if it is cast in stone. it is not cast in stone. If certain events beyond our control occur, the case can go beyond 42 days.
Just the last bit before I let you two gentlemen go, Justice Abdulai, there's also a motion that we're told, based on the face of the document that we've seen, will be moved. And I want you to explain that to us. And that's proposed persons who will be interrogated and the questions. What does this mean to the process?
Typically, this shouldn't be a motion because as Martin said, today is for directions, and so the Supreme Court will be giving direction as to all the persons who they intend, the parties would yield the information as to how many witnesses they would want to call and how and when. All these things will be decided today. And so for a person to file a motion in this manner, it clearly tells you that whoever they intend to be held before the Supreme Court to give evidence is a very important person to their case. And so they are looking at a situation of having to subpoena that person in case the person does not wish to come. And so anytime you find a motion in this manner, there's a possibility of a subpoena being issued to compel the person that they wish to be in the box, but who doesn't want to be in the box for whatever reason. The person may not want to come. And so the party who intends to rely on that person's evidence to his benefit will naturally have to go through this process of subpoenaing him. But I do not know why they have to file the motion at this moment. Maybe, of course, being in the suit, they know more than those of us outside know. They know who can better their case for them if the person gives evidence, among other things. This is the only reason why you find a motion like this being moved.
Okay, I'll let you have a say on this, Mr. Pebu, but I'd like to read some of the questions. And will this be questions that they will be asking the persons who appear? So, for instance, was there practice in previous presidential elections in the Fourth Republic of collated figures from constituencies being received in the strong room at the headquarters of first respondent, in this case, which is the EC, in the presence of agents of candidates? Let's go down and run through some of them. Was that practice described followed in respect of the December 7th elections? Is the 7th December elections the first time regional collation centers have been interposed? How were results transmitted from the constituency collation centers? How were results transmitted from the regional? Point 6 is crucial. Did the National Communication Authority facilitate in any way the transmission of results to the headquarters of the Electoral Commission? When did Mrs. Jean Mensah, the chairperson of the commission and the returning officer of the presidential election, first realized there were errors in figures she had announced in her declaration of 9th December? How did she get to realize there were errors in figures she had announced in her declaration of 9th December? And there are other questions. If you go to my JoyNews, you would see this document. Mr. Pebu, how important is this? And are you surprised that this is coming up at this time?
Probably, once again here, the key word to watch out is that it is a question of strategy. Because we are not in the NDC or Mr. Mahama's situation room, trust me, some of the things we say, we can't get them right. Yes, because you see, because they are in charge of their case, they know best some of the strategies they want to deploy to their best advantage. On the face of it, as I stated earlier, we can only see that, yes, it is to make sure that the trial is confined, it's narrowed, so that there can be a fast trial. And then, as I also stated, to make sure that they discredit the EC. But beyond this, there can be other reasons that we can't see. Because as lawyers, when you are in charge of a case, there are so many other reasons for which you file processes. So at this stage, I take it that, look, once they put this on paper, they consider that very, very, very important to their case. And so we will grant them that opportunity.
Is this a case that you sit back and watch on television, or even though you're not one of the lawyers, you sit in the courtroom and follow through, Mr. Pebu?
Obviously on television, because the Supreme Court is small. I mean, the courtroom, it can't accommodate all lawyers. So I prefer to follow on television, and most especially radio, because you want to be multitasking and working alongside. Okay. Yeah, so it's fine. But it's very commendable that the Chief Justice granted the request to make for live telecast of the proceedings.
And Mr. Pebu, it didn't quite grant that request because it said that it had already decided.
Yes, when I mean request, you remember before not necessarily from Mr. Mahama, but I know on some of these platforms we had started requesting long before Mr. Mahama's team brought the formal application. If you check, I think on various media that I was interviewed on, we kept asking for. So at least as for making requests for this, so many people did before the. Nothing turns on it. At least factually, a lot of people made some requests before maybe it's just the nature, because it was not yet time. The Chief Justice was not bound to come out and say he's granting or not granting.
All right. Well, Mr. Pebu, good to know that you're following closely so we can have conversations in the future. I thank you for your time. Justice Abdulai, how would you be following this process? Are you in court?
I'm not in court at the moment because I'm supposed to be in court in the afternoon. But naturally, we would all be following because I maintain my position that every case that goes to the Supreme Court is as important as for a lawyer and a law student, and indeed every judge, because it is the tool of your trade. Whatever the outcome is, would determine how your life gets shaped going forward. And so you cannot really waste it away if there's a matter going to the Supreme Court. Indeed, that is why lawyers would always buy the law reports coming from the Supreme Court and other places because of their singular importance. They determine the entire laws of the Republic. And your reliance on issues coming from the Supreme Court is the best way to earn a good living. And so, for me, it is important at all fronts. Whichever angle you take it from, you have no choice than to follow it and then see the outcome. And for the purpose of education, and indeed also for the purposes of shaping the law.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for doing this and not charging us, because our viewers, of course, would like for the issues to be broken down. So we'll have conversations after this hearing today. Thanks a lot, Mr. Justice Abdulai. He's a lawyer. We also had Mr. Martin Amidu, who is also a lawyer, usually taking on human rights issues. That's our conversation on the election petition hearing day 2 today. It would start from 9:30 a.m. and we will be bringing you that live here on our show. But from the courts, let's talk about another issue that all of us are involved in, the reopening of schools. Some of our children went to school yesterday, and some of the stories that they told us as parents, some unbelievable, some of the young kids even saying that they can conquer COVID-19. Teachers threatening to call police just so children can wear their mask. Very interesting stories coming, but this is no joke at all. We would find out in terms of how the protocols are being adhered to in schools. We will do a round trip across the country with our correspondent. That will be after this here on the M Show. Stay with us.